She made it to the bridge edge. That was all she had left. Her legs were gone. Her breathing was shot. She grabbed that railing with both hands and held on like it was the only solid thing in the world. Because behind her, he was already closing the last few steps. She had nowhere left to run, nowhere left to go. He knew it. She knew it. What neither of them knew was who was coming through the dark behind them. The man who stepped onto that bridge, coming to save her from the creep. He came to end it. What happened in between those moments, no one can imagine it. If you are new here, welcome. Subscribe and turn on notifications because we drop a new story every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. Now, to understand what happened on that bridge, you need to go back to the beginning. You need to know who she was. You need to know who was hunting her. And you need to know who had been watching them both from the shadows long before that night. Her name was Safina Adaeze Okafor, 24 years old, Nigerian. From a city called Enugu, where her father was a university professor and her mother was a surgeon, and dinner table conversations covered everything from market economics to ancient philosophy to why kindness was not optional, it was the baseline. She came to Seoul on a full scholarship, graduate research fellowship at Seoul National University, International Development and Policy, the kind of program that attracted the most serious minds from across the world. But the moment Safina walked into that orientation room, something happened that had nothing to do with academics. She stopped the room. Not on purpose. That was the thing about her. She never tried. She simply walked in carrying her laptop bag and a coffee she had bought from the stall outside the gate, and she smiled at the security guard and asked his name and thanked him by it, and held the elevator door for the quiet student rushing in behind her, and sat down in the front row and opened her notebook like she had been looking forward to this her entire life. Half the room was watching her before she said a single word. She was tall, long-limbed. Her skin was a deep, luminous brown, the kind that seemed to carry light inside it rather than simply reflect it. Strong cheekbones, dark, wide eyes. When she smiled, and she smiled often, genuinely, at everyone, her whole face moved. Both eyes crinkled. One dimple appeared on her left cheek. Something in that smile opened like a door swinging all the way back. You felt, somehow, that she was glad you existed. She wore her hair natural. Some days a massive cloud around her head that stopped people mid-conversation. Some days twisted up in a way that made her look like royalty. She had hands that moved when she talked. A laugh that came from somewhere deep and real, never performed. She was extraordinary. And she had absolutely no idea. There was one person in that orientation room who noticed her differently. Not with wonder, not with admiration, with something that had no clean name obsession wearing the mask of devotion, possession dressed up as love. His name was Cho Beom-jin, quiet, forgettable. The kind of person who arrived early and left late, and never said enough for anyone to remember. He sat at the back with a clear sightline to the front row, and from the moment Safina walked in, he stopped looking anywhere else. On the first day, she smiled at him in the elevator. She smiled at everyone. That was simply who she was. But Cho Beom-jin was not everyone. And for a man who had spent his entire life being overlooked, invisible, forgettable, that smile cracked something open inside him that should have stayed shut. He replayed it that night. The following week. For a month. And in the dark corners of a mind that had never learned to hold certain feelings safely, what should have been a pleasant memory began to harden into something else. Something that whispered she had chosen him with that smile. That she already belonged to him. She just didn't know it yet. The first letter appeared under her dorm room door 2 weeks after orientation. You don't know it yet. But you were made for me. No signature. Plain paper. Just those words. She showed her roommate, Yuna. They both laughed nervously and threw it away. The second letter came the following week, then the third, then the fourth. Each one more intimate, more certain, like the writer was already inside a relationship with her in his head and simply sending her updates. She stopped laughing. She reported it. University security increased patrols. Student welfare told her to document everything. Neither of those things was enough, and she knew it. But here is what you need to understand about Safina. She had not come all the way to Seoul to become smaller. She sat in the front row. She asked difficult questions. She stayed late. She was exactly who she was, every single day, because she refused to let anonymous paper make her afraid. She was right to be strong, but she was wrong that she was alone in noticing what was happening. He sat in the back row of every seminar. He spoke rarely. When he did, the room went quiet not because his voice was loud, but because whatever he said was so precisely correct that arguing felt like a waste of everyone's time. He was lean, composed, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes always slightly narrowed, not from suspicion, but from the habit of seeing everything and letting nothing show on his face. He was 27 years old. His name was Park Jun. Nobody in that department knew who he was. That was completely, deliberately, by design. Because Park Jun was not just a graduate student in international relations, Park Jun was the head of one of the most powerful criminal organizations in southern Seoul. And the story of how a boy becomes a boss, it never starts with ambition. It starts with a door that doesn't open. Park Jun was 15 when 3 men came to his house. He was upstairs, headphones in, reading. He heard voices below, and then a door, and then a silence. That felt so wrong, his body moved before his mind understood why. He found his mother at the kitchen table, hands flat on the surface, face drained of every color. His father did not come home that evening. He never came home. The Young Il Syndicate, the rival organization that had spent a decade pressuring the Park family, had sent their final answer to his father's final refusal. His uncle stepped in, took control, sat 16-year-old Jun down and said, "You are protected, but this world is not for you. Go to school. Stay quiet. Stay out of the way." Jun was quiet. He went to school. He stayed at the top of every class. He read books on military strategy and organizational theory and the history of how power structures form and collapse. He trained every morning kickboxing, judo, Muay Thai, building his body with the same precision he brought to everything. Not from anger, from preparation. Because here is what you need to understand about men like Park Jun. The more quietly they move, the more certain they already are. At 19, he found the crack in his uncle's foundation, a series of hidden debts, money borrowed against the organization's assets without authorization or disclosure. He documented everything. He prepared a recovery plan. He presented both to the organization's senior members in a private meeting he arranged himself. His uncle was quietly retired. Park Jun was 19. At 21, he was running everything. He built rules, hard lines that would not be crossed. He moved dangerous work deeper into shadow and everything that could be legitimate into the light. He brought in lawyers, accountants, people who understood systems. Violence was a last language, the one you spoke only when every other language had completely failed. But when required, he was fluent. What he genuinely wanted underneath all of it was to understand power, why certain structures survived, why some built things and others only consumed. He had lived his entire life inside the consuming kind. He wanted to understand the other. That was why, at 25, he enrolled at Seoul National University, legitimately, under his real name. Nobody in academic circles connected Park Jun, the graduate student, to the names spoken in certain rooms in the city with a very specific kind of caution. He sat in the back. He watched. And in the first week of semester, Safina Adaye's Okafor sat down in the front row. He noticed her immediately, not the way Byam Jin noticed her. He noticed the quality of her thinking, the precision, the way she made complex arguments feel accessible without ever making them simple. The way she treated everyone, professors, students, campus staff, like they were worth her full attention. He also noticed, within 2 weeks, that she was being watched. Cho Byam-jin, back row, consistent angle, head tracking her movements while the rest of his body stayed completely still, showing up in places just slightly too consistently to be coincidence. Park Jun said nothing. He filed it. He watched. But something old and trained in him had marked Cho Byam-jin, and it did not unmark him. 6 weeks into the semester, the Seoul sky collapsed. Heavy autumn rain, the kind that arrives with zero warning and floods the pathways in minutes. Safina stood at the building entrance after her seminar with her laptop bag pressed to her chest, looking at the rain, calculating. Footsteps came up beside her and stopped. She glanced sideways. Park June, the quiet one from the back row. Large black umbrella, looking at the rain like he was assessing it, not admiring it. I should have checked the forecast, she said. He looked at her. Something shifted in his expression, barely visible, like a window opening a crack. My building is on the way to the graduate residences. You're in Block C. She blinked. How do you know that? I saw you moving in during orientation week. She studied his profile, the clean lines, the face that gave you almost nothing without permission. Are you offering to walk me? A pause. The umbrella is large enough. Not charming, not warm. The most efficient possible version of an offer, without any decoration. And somehow that made it feel more genuine than anything smooth would have. They walked. She lasted 60 seconds of silence. Then, you made a point in seminar today about eliminating informal governance structures, that it creates a power vacuum more dangerous than whatever you removed. Yes, that's exactly what my thesis research is about, from the African side. He looked at her sideways, slowly, like he was deciding something. I know. I read your research summary in the department directory. She almost stopped walking. You read my research summary? I read everyone's. It helps me understand why people say what they say. She studied his profile. And what does mine tell you? That you grew up somewhere with a functioning informal system. And you watched someone try to formalize it badly. She went quiet for one full stride. Then, softer. My grandmother ran the market cooperative in our neighborhood for 30 years. When the government came with their modernization program, they dismantled everything she built in 8 months. Half the families lost their income. The market never recovered. He said nothing. But the quality of his silence was different from other people's silence. It received things. They reached her building. He tilted the umbrella so she stayed dry while the rain hit his far shoulder. He didn't seem to notice. Thank you, she said. He nodded. Started to turn. I'm Safina, she said to his back. He paused, half-turned. One corner of his mouth barely. I know. She raised her eyebrows. Park June, he said, and walked back into the rain. She stood in the entrance, watching his dark figure disappear, and felt something she couldn't quite name. Like finding a door in a wall she had assumed was solid. She was already thinking about what was on the other side. She found the 4th floor of the SNU library in her 3rd week. The humanities reference stacks, old journals, bound dissertations nobody had touched in years, warm low light, high-backed chairs. The smell of paper and cold air, and a silence so complete it felt like a room that had been kept just for her. Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, sometimes until the 1 a.m. closing. She read things that weren't required for her thesis, but that she felt she needed the context beneath the context, the history under the argument. 3 ink colors. Quiet conversations with herself when she was working through something hard. She had been using it for 6 weeks before she found out she wasn't alone. Thursday, 11:30 p.m. Deep in a regional development journal, all 3 pens going. And then from 2 rows over, the soft sound of pages turning. Steady, unhurried. 2. Someone reading, not browsing. She went completely still. Stood up, looked around the end of the shelf. Park June. Sitting in the chair, at the far end of row 14. One ankle crossed over his knee. A thick book open in his lap. Reading with the complete absorption of a man who had set down everything else. He looked up. Their eyes met through the gap in the shelves. Neither of them moved. Then Safina stepped around the shelf and stood in his row. You use this section too. Every Tuesday and Thursday. She blinked. We've been 2 rows apart for 6 weeks. You knew I was here the whole time? I heard your pen. You press harder on the downstrokes. She had absolutely no idea what to do with that. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. He watched her do it. She opened her notebook. He returned to his book. They studied. 40 minutes. And the silence between them, this was the part she could never explain afterward. It didn't press. It didn't demand. It simply settled around them both like something they had agreed on long ago, without saying a single word. At 12:15, she closed her notebook and stretched. "What are you reading?" He turned the cover toward her. Asymmetric Conflict Theory. Volume 2. For your thesis? She asked. Among other reasons. She wanted to ask what the other reasons were. Something in his expression not cold, but bounded, like a gate unlocked but not yet open, told her tonight was not the night. Same time Thursday? She said instead. He looked at her. That look. Yes. She smiled and left. He watched the empty space where she had been. He read the same paragraph 4 times and didn't absorb a single word. He ran the check on Cho Byum-jin on a Thursday in October. He had come out of the library exit and found Byum-jin standing in the shadow of the building across the road at 11:50 p.m., not moving, not on his phone, just standing in the dark, facing the door Safina always came out of. The report came back 48 hours later. Cho Byum-jin, 26 years old. Father, Cho Dae-won, lieutenant of the Yong-il Syndicate. The same organization. The same name. The same people who had sent 3 men to his house 11 years ago. Park Jun read it once, set it down, sat with it. This was not a coincidence. Whether Byum-jin had been placed at SNU deliberately or had found Jun by accident, it didn't matter. The result was the same. The son of his most dangerous enemy had chosen Safina as the object of something that was already past obsession, and Safina had no idea. He adjusted his schedule quietly. He began arriving at the library exit at 12:45, said nothing about it, and simply appeared when she packed her things. He mapped the route between the library and the graduate residences. Every side street, every shortcut, every stretch of shadow. He noted the corridor between the library's east wing and the main path, long, narrow stone wall on one side, thick hedging on the other. The darkest part of the whole walk. He told himself he was managing a risk variable. He was not entirely honest with himself. There was something else Cho Byum-jin didn't know about Safina. Something almost nobody in that department knew. She had trained in Shotokan karate for 6 years. Her father had insisted when she was 11. She hated it the first year. The rigid discipline, the repetition, the older students who moved like they were born knowing things she was only beginning to learn. Then something clicked. She was 12 and a half, mid-kata, and suddenly she wasn't a girl going through movements anymore. She was someone who understood her own body as a system, as forces and leverage and angles. Karate wasn't about strength. It was about using what you had with absolute precision. Brown belt at 17. Black belt at 19. She hadn't competed since arriving in Korea. But the body doesn't forget 1,000 repetitions. Muscle memory doesn't expire. The responses drilled into her nervous system were still there, sitting quietly, waiting. Thursday, late November, 11 p.m. Safina was in row 14, 4th floor of the SNU library, and she had just found something extraordinary. A footnote in a 1994 regional report, a direct parallel to the case study at the heart of her thesis. The link she had been searching for between 2 frameworks for 3 months. She filled 2 pages in 10 minutes, writing so fast her handwriting barely stayed legible, 3 pens going simultaneously. Park Jun was 2 rows over. He heard the change in the rhythm of her pen and knew from that sound alone that she had found something. At 12:45, the overhead lights flickered, 15-minute warning. She packed slowly, still reading, still electric with what she had found. She was the last person on the 4th floor. She took the stairs, pushed through the side exit, turned left. She was thinking about the footnote. She was not thinking about what was waiting in the dark. Halfway down the corridor, stone wall on her right, thick hedging on her left, the path narrowing at the curve the hand came from behind. An arm locked across her upper body, a chest pressing hard into her back, hot breath at her neck. Finally, his voice was barely above a whisper. Just us. She knew the voice. Recognition hit her like cold water. And then something happened inside her that was not panic. Colder than panic. Sharper. More organized. Her training didn't announce itself. It arrived. She dropped all her weight, instantly. dead weight straight down, which shattered the lock across her chest. His grip shifted. She turned into him, not away, and drove her elbow backward and upward into his solar plexus before he completed the turn. The sound he made was not a word. She stepped out, pivoted, drove the heel of her palm toward his nose. He turned, and it caught his cheekbone instead, a crack she felt all the way up through her wrist and into her shoulder. She ran. No screaming. Screaming burns oxygen and announces your location. She ran with direction, phone in hand, dialing. Voicemail. She kept running. She was fast. 6 years of training had made her body precise and efficient, but he was bigger than she'd realized. He was recovering faster than she expected. Behind her, the footsteps found their rhythm again. And her ankle, the old ankle, the one from 6 months ago that never properly healed, started to give. She had run the wrong direction. Instinct had taken her toward the riverside path, toward the bridge, toward the light. She reached the railing. Her left knee buckled. Both hands grabbed the bars and held on hard. Her lungs were tearing. The river was 30 feet below, black and fast, and the city glittered in it, bright and completely indifferent. She turned. He stopped 10 meters away. He wasn't running anymore. He was walking, steady, patient, like a man who had waited 8 months for this exact moment and had all the time in the world now that she had run out of road. He was smiling. You're stronger than I thought. One slow step closer. But there's nowhere left. She held his gaze, both hands still on the railing. Her breathing was slowing deliberately because she was controlling it, and her mind was still calculating, still working, still looking for anything. You've been writing to me, she said. Since the first day. Another step. You smiled at me. I smile at everyone. Not like that, his voice dropped. You don't know what you do to people. She saw it then, in the dark, against the bridge wall, the broken piece of railing post, lying on the ground. He had seen it before she did. He was already moving toward it. She started to move. Not fast enough. The wood caught her above the left ear, glancing, but hard, and the world became white fragments, then gray. Then the railing was going away from her, and the pavement was coming fast, and then dark. Park Jun had been 100 meters behind them for 11 minutes. He had come out of the library exit and seen the shape of Beom-jin detach from the shadows and begin moving in the direction Safina had gone. The way he moved wasn't a student heading home. It had a direction, a certainty. The walk of a man arriving somewhere he had already decided to be. Every instinct Park Jun owned went cold and clear. He cut through the hedgerow path parallel to the main corridor, closed the distance fast, heard the sounds from inside the sharp impact, a grunt, footsteps, and felt something activate in him that he had no clean name for. Something with teeth, something that had been patient for a very long time and was done. He heard her running, saw her emerge ahead of him fast, phone to her ear, body controlled even in fear. He almost called to her. He didn't. Because Beom-jin was right behind her, and this needed ground. He needed it controlled. He followed, watched her reach the bridge, watched her turn, watched her try to buy seconds with words. He was already running flat out when Beom-jin's hand found the broken post. 8 seconds. Cho Beom-jin was leaning over her collapsed form, reaching, when the fingers closed on the back of his collar. The world tilted. Beom-jin hit the bridge pavement with a force that drove everything out of his body. He scrambled to get up. He got halfway. Park Jun was standing over him. Beom-jin looked up at that face still, composed, completely unhurried, and felt something drop through him like cold water dropping through a body. Because he knew that face. Not from the seminar room. From things his father had said in certain rooms, Beom-jin was barely old enough to sit in. Park, get up. 2 words, the quietest words of the night. But Beom-jin was on his feet before he'd decided to stand, because his body understood before his mind caught up. He still had the wood. He swung it hard, desperate, the full arc. Park Jun was already gone from where it expected him. He stepped inside the arc before it could build force. The elbow that came back was precise, measured. Into Beom-jin's jaw with exactly the force needed, no more, no less. Beom-yin's legs buckled. Park Jun's other hand was already on his shirt, keeping him upright. And then the knee came up into his midsection, and the sound Byung-jin made was not something a person should make. The wood clattered across the bridge pavement and disappeared into the dark. Byung-jin threw a wild left, panicked. No technique. Park Jun caught the wrist, turned it, slowly, until the joint reached its limit and then just slightly past it. The sound was small, precise. The pain it produced was enormous. He used the momentum from the turn to pivot Byung-jin around and walked him directly into the bridge railing at full speed. The impact echoed off the water below. Byung-jin slid down the railing, one wrist not cooperating, both hands trying to find something solid. Park Jun crouched, level with his face. The bridge light caught his eyes steady, unblinking. The eyes of a man who had made his decision long before this moment and was simply carrying it out. "You know who I am," he said. Byung-jin's eyes were showing white at the edges. "Then you understand, what I'm telling you is not a threat. It's a description." A pause that had weight. "You will not finish your degree at this university. You will leave this city. Tomorrow you go back to your father, and you tell him whatever he sent you here to do, it's finished. It's over." Byung-jin tried to speak. "And if I ever see you again," Park Jun continued, like he hadn't heard it, "anywhere, in any context, in any country, I will not be having this conversation." He let that land. "There is also a message for your father. Tell him the account is still open. He knows what that means." He stood, looked down at Byung-jin on the pavement of the bridge. "Get off my bridge." He said it the way someone says "my home," not with aggression, with complete, settled certainty. Like the bridge had always been his. Like everything within reach of the woman lying against the railing behind him had, in the last 2 minutes, quietly and permanently become his, to protect. Byung-jin looked toward Safina. Park Jun's gaze moved to his face. Just moved there, nothing else, no words needed. Byung-jin got up. He left without another word. His footsteps faded across the bridge and dissolved into the dark city. Park Jun turned to Safina. She came back in pieces. Cold pavement beneath her, a railing pressing into her shoulder, distant footsteps fading, and then closer breathing that was not her own. She opened her eyes. Park Jun was kneeling beside her, one knee on the bridge surface, his jacket folded into a rectangle and placed under her head. He wasn't touching her. He was watching her face with that complete, still attention she recognized from seminar rooms and library tables. Like she was something he needed to understand precisely. "He's gone," he said, before she could ask. She tried to sit up. He didn't stop her. He held out a hand, offered, not imposed, and she took it and used it to pull herself upright. The bridge tilted slightly. She kept her eyes open and waited. "Your head," he said. "I know. You need a doctor. I know that too." She focused on his face. He was very close. His hand was at her shoulder, steadying, careful, the grip of someone who understood force precisely and was using less than that. "You were following us." "Yes. You knew he was out there. I confirmed it 6 weeks ago." She looked at him. With her head ringing and her ankle aching and the memory of the last hour still raw all over her, she saw something she hadn't caught before. Not just the composure. The thing the composure was built on top of, something weighty. Something that had made difficult choices in dark places and carried them without complaint. "Who are you?" she said, quietly, not accusing, genuinely asking. The longest pause he had ever given her. "Someone who wasn't going to let him hurt you," he said. Not an answer. She knew it wasn't. And the weight in how he said it, the complete absence of performance, meant she couldn't press. Not tonight, not here. She nodded. "Okay." He made a call, brief, quiet Korean. Then he looked back at her, and she was already looking at him. The bridge was silent around them. Neither looked away immediately. "Thank you," she said, for whatever that was. "It was necessary." She almost laughed. Most people would just say they're glad you're safe. A pause. "I'm glad you're safe." Flat, immediate, like he'd grabbed the words before he could decide whether saying them was wise. She looked at him. Was that in there somewhere? The one cornered almost smile. Apparently. She laughed quiet, real, from the low place where all her genuine laughs came from. Even now, even here, he watched it happen. Then he looked at the river. He stayed in the hospital for 4 hours. She didn't ask him to. He was simply there in the corner chair when the nurse called her name. There when the doctor cleared her. Still there, at 4 in the morning, phone face down on his knee. Awake. Not performing, waiting. Just present the way a wall is present. Solid, permanent, not requiring anything in return. She came out to find him exactly where she'd last seen him. You stayed, she said. I said I would follow. You meant to the hospital, not for 4 hours. He stood, pocketed his phone. Are you ready to go? He walked her home in the pre-dawn dark, almost silent city. Just their footsteps on cold pavement, the distant sound of the first morning buses starting their routes. Cold, clean November air. What did you do to him on the bridge? She said. After I went down, convinced him to relocate. A beat, convinced. Firmly. She didn't ask again. But she filed it. She was building a picture of this man piece by piece, and she could see it had edges she hadn't reached yet, edges connected to something larger and more serious than any program of study. She found, walking in the 4 a.m. dark, that she was not afraid of that. She was curious. What happened next happened slowly. This was important. If it had moved fast, swept up in shock, in gratitude, in the raw electricity of what happened on that bridge, it would have been something else entirely. A moment, an event. What happened instead was a shift. Quiet, accumulating. The way light changes in a room, when a window opens somewhere you can't see. He started walking her out of the library every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:45. No announcement, no discussion. He simply appeared at her row when she was packing, gathered his things, waited. She gathered hers. They walked. This was how it was now. They talked more, not about feelings. Neither of them was ready for that vocabulary, and neither was in a hurry. They talked about ideas, her research, his responses, which came from angles she hadn't considered, informed by something larger than books and seminar rooms. He told her once, carefully, that he had spent significant time studying how power systems maintain themselves in theory and in practice. She heard in those words the shadow of something real. She didn't push. She told him more about her grandmother, the market, what it had looked like before, the laughter in it, the trust networks and informal credit systems and social architecture built over 30 years and dismantled in 8 months with paperwork and good intentions. He listened the way he did everything, completely. One afternoon, she showed him a photograph. Her grandmother. Arms crossed, standing in the middle of her market with an expression that said she had built every stall in that place with her own hands and intended to be standing there for another 30 years. He looked at it for a long time. She was magnificent, he said. She was, Safina said softly. She still is. She's just not in her kingdom anymore. He handed the photograph back. Their fingers touched for half a second. Neither of them mentioned it, but neither of them pretended it hadn't happened. He told her on a Saturday in November. A park bench, deliberately ordinary, neutral ground. He sat very straight. He spoke in his even, factual voice. He told her he led an organization that operated outside legal frameworks, that it had been his father's. He told her about the Young-Il Syndicate, about his father. He didn't dramatize it. He stated it the way he stated everything with the precision of someone who understood that imprecise words cause more damage than precise ones. He told her Cho Beom-jin was the son of the man who had ordered his father's death. Then, I'm not asking you to accept this. I'm telling you because you deserve accurate information about the person you are spending time with. Safina was quiet. A long quiet. Pigeons crossing the path. The sound of distant traffic. Leaves moving in the cold. You checked him because of me, she said finally. He was a threat. You checked him because of me, she said again. Softer. Not an argument. Naming the thing he wasn't saying out loud. He didn't answer. She looked at him. I'm not asking you to explain yourself. I just want you to know I see it. Not just the bridge. Before the bridge. The library. The walking. All of it. She paused. I see it. His jaw worked slightly. the only sign of something significant moving through him. "I've been spending time," she said carefully, "with someone who read my research summary before he knew me, who walked me through the rain without making it a thing, who sat 2 rows away from me in an empty library and said nothing about it for 6 weeks, who ran across a dark bridge at 1 in the morning." A pause. "The additional information is significant. I'm not dismissing it, but it doesn't replace what I already know." "What do you already know?" he said. She looked at him directly. "That you're trying in your own precise and guarded and slightly impossible way to be a decent man inside an indecent situation." The wind moved through the park. He looked at her for a long time. "You're difficult to account for," he said, and his voice when he said it was different from his usual voice. Lower. Something present in it that hadn't been there in all their library nights and rainy walks. She smiled, the full one, both eyes, both corners, the dimple. "I'm going to take that as the compliment it absolutely is." The almost smile, wider than she had ever seen it, both corners, reaching his eyes, warming them. "It is," he said. "It happened in the library." Of course it did. December, a Tuesday. Close to the end of semester. The heating clicked and ticked through the pipes overhead. The building nearly empty by midnight. Both of them, in row 14, buried in their work. 2 cups of tea on the table beside her notebook appearing at 11:30 now, with the quiet regularity of something that had always been this way. She was deep in her thesis conclusion when she found the last piece. The synthesis she'd been reaching for. The final argument that pulled 3 months of research into one clear, complete shape. A footnote in a 1997 policy document, she'd almost skipped one sentence, elegant and obvious in retrospect. She made a sound, involuntary, a short, sharp exhale of pure joy. She looked up. He was already looking at her. She hadn't heard him look up, but he was looking at her with that complete, still attention she recognized, the one that meant maximum seriousness. Like she was something he needed to understand very precisely. "I found it," she said, breathless. "Park Jun, I found the last piece." She turned the document toward him and leaned forward, pointing at the footnote, talking fast, electric with it. He leaned forward too, both of them over the same small table, heads close. The lamplight warm between them. He stopped reading. She talked for 2 more sentences before she felt it. The quality of his silence had changed. She looked up. He wasn't looking at the page. He was looking at her, very close. The library warm and still around them. That expression, the complete, maximum attention expression. But not on the page, on her. Entirely on her. "Did you hear what I just said?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Yes." He hadn't moved. "Park Jun." I know, like he was answering a question she hadn't asked. Like the question had been there between them for a long time and he was simply, finally, answering it. His hand came up slowly. So slowly. Toward her face slowly enough that she could see it coming. Slowly enough that she could have moved away. His fingertips touched her jaw. Just that. The lightest possible contact. From a man who calculated force precisely, using barely any force at all. She didn't move away. Her face tilted almost without deciding to toward his hand. And Park Jun closed the remaining distance. The kiss was quiet. It was careful. It was the most honest thing in the room. Then it deepened, not rushing, not hurrying. The way trust deepens, because it has earned the right. Everything between them was present in it. The umbrella, in the rain. The 2 rows apart in the empty library. The bridge in the dark. The 4 hours in the hospital. The park bench in November. The tea that appeared every Tuesday and Thursday without a single word about it. All of it, at once, in the same quiet moment. She brought her hand up and pressed it flat against his chest, not pushing away, feeling. The steadiness of him, the reality of him, his heartbeat beneath her palm, not entirely steady. When they separated, neither of them spoke. He pressed his forehead against hers. His breathing had changed. She could feel it, the slight unevenness that the composure wasn't quite hiding. She had done that. She had made Park Jun's breathing uneven. She held that knowledge gently, like something fragile and real. "I told you," she said, soft. "We just keep doing what we've been doing and see where it goes." A pause. Then she heard it. A sound she had no previous reference for, from him. Laughter. Low, brief, quiet, completely uncalculated. The laugh of someone who had forgotten they were allowed to laugh and then suddenly remembered. She pulled back just far enough to see his face. The smile. Full. Both corners. No restraint at all. Reaching his eyes. Changing them completely. Turning them from guarded to warm in 1 second. She had seen the almost smile. She had seen hints. She had never seen this. She looked at it like she was memorizing it, because she knew she was seeing something almost nobody ever got to see. "There he is," she said softly. His hand was still at her jaw. His thumb pressed once gently, against her cheek, like punctuation. Like yes. He looked at her. And what she saw in his eyes now, with nothing in front of it, nothing held back, was enormous. Carefully kept, long guarded. And tonight, in row 14, in this warm library light, between two people who had found each other in the dark and had been circling ever since. Open. Outside, Seoul glittered in the black river. Somewhere in the city, an account was still open, and a man with a broken wrist was delivering a message to his father. Somewhere in southern Seoul, an organization ran according to rules built line by careful line by a man trying to become something different from what he'd inherited. And in row 14 of the 4th floor of the SNU Central Library, a Korean Mafia boss and a brilliant Nigerian woman sat with their foreheads touching, the lamp warm above them, the tea gone cold, neither of them in any hurry at all. If this story hit you, drop a comment below and tell me the moment that got you. Was it the bridge? Was it the library? Was it that smile at the end that he never shows anyone? Tell me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. The next story is coming and you are not going to want to miss it. Share this with someone who needs a story tonight. I will see you in the next one.